Hello, my name is Igor and welcome to my Tech Fun. And topic in this video is filament dryers again. And I want to compare these two products. This one is eSun eBox versus Sunlu Filadryer S1. I did a detailed review of each one approximately a month ago. But in this video I want to do some hardware comparison, and then I want to find the answer to question which one dries better. Okay, I will not go into details what are good enough. Just briefly to summarize here, both are good to dry PLA, PETG, maybe even ABS. They're not strong enough to dry a nylon completely, but they are good enough to keep it dry during 3D printing after you, I don't know, dry it in an oven, for example. Just shortly, why do you need a filament dryer? Well, filaments can absorb moisture from the air, and this may have very negative effect to 3D printing. Some types are less sensitive to this, some types are more sensitive to this moisture. For example, PETG and nylon are very sensitive to this. But more details I mentioned in those separate review videos. So let's go quickly to the hardware comparison. Both works on DC power, so we will need some power adapter. The eSun works on 12 volts and 36 watts. The Sunlu works on 24 volts and 48 watts. I measured the Sunlu has 2 times bigger power consumption, but I wouldn't worry about this because even that is very, very low. So I don't mind if the power consumption is bigger, just I want that heat to be produced inside. Both have displays, buttons, and they have these spool holding rollers. Not big difference, but the eSun rolls smoother. This one is a little bit wider, but the rollers are shorter, so the maximum spool dimensions for the eSun is 200 mm in diameter and 73 mm, and on Sunlu 210 mm in diameter and 85 mm in the length, the width of the spool. The eSun doesn't have the thermal insulation inside. The Sunlu has some thermal insulation here on this plastic. Now the eSun has the weight scale inside, so with that you can approximately calculate how much filament you have on the spool. So that's a very positive thing. On Sunlu we don't have this weight scale. Now on Sunlu we can see the operating temperature on the display, and of course we can set different temperatures up to 55 degrees Celsius. On eSun we cannot see the temperature on a display, only we can set the levels from 1 to 4, and we have to know what level is for which filament. No humidity meter on each of these, but I don't know, so it's very cheap sensor, and I think it should be included so we can know what is the humidity inside these boxes. As I mentioned, operating temperature for Sunlu is between 35 and 55 degrees Celsius, but this is something what you can set on this display, and the sensor is here very low, very close to this. So usually here the temperature is smaller on a higher position. On eSun, as I mentioned, on the specification you can see that it can measure the temperatures up to 80 degrees Celsius, but be careful, that's only the temperature of the heater element, which is very low somewhere inside. The operating temperature is actually up to 50 degrees Celsius. So this is why they are not enough for nylon drying, because we need there maybe 70 degrees Celsius, for example. But they can keep the nylon dry, as I mentioned already. Now the eSun has this Bowden tube, and this means that filament can go through this to the 3D printer, and this will reduce the absorbing moisture from the air when it's outside of the box. With Sunlu we don't have any Bowden tube here, but we have here 2 exits of the filament, and here we have only one. So the eSun has the fan and the place for silica gel inside. The silica gel is not provided in the packaging, so you have to use some your own. And of course, since there is no humidity meter, you have to pay attention. If it will be full of moisture, then you have to dry it in the micro oven, for example. Unfortunately, here we don't have or fan or any place or holder for the silica gear. Maybe in this corner you can DIY some holder, but otherwise we don't have any other space for that. But the Sunlu is very quiet. Noise from the Sunlu. Absolutely no sound. The eSun, unfortunately, we have two sources of noise. The one is the fan. So this fan, unfortunately, is very noisy. And the other source of noise is the click sound. Approximately every, I don't know, 15 or 20 seconds, I can hear the click. It looks like it's some kind of relay turns on off the heating element. And I don't know why they didn't use some MOSFET or something like that, which is much more quieter. And now noise from the eBox. Let's open it. And now let's listen to the click sound. I will cut out only the clicks, but here you can see the times how often it clicks. So in 1 minute I had maybe 4 or 5 click sounds. So that was the another one. Heating is from the bottom on the seat. I couldn't even see the heating elements correctly. On Sunlu, a very nice heating element is this plate here, and it very equally heats from the bottom. I could measure that heating element temperature. It's a little bit over 70 degrees Celsius. And that's my hardware comparison. And now I have to find out some kind of experiment which will be quite equal and to see which one dries better. And for this I will sacrifice this, I don't know, 10 meter of nylon filament. I will place it in the water a couple of hours, but with this I completely ruined this filament, so I will not even try to 3D print with it. But for comparison test it will be okay, because I will split it in half and I will dry equal time in both dryers, and then I will measure the weight, how much change I will get with it. Actually, I left it here overnight. So I have here two equal length, and now let's measure the weight. .02. .01. So exactly in the center, inside the Sunlu box, the stabilized temperature is 42.5 degrees Celsius. And inside the eSun, exactly on the center, the stabilized temperature is 39.1 degrees Celsius. Now, after 4 hours of drying, let's measure the weights. Let's start with the eSun. .86. And now dried with the Sunlu. .88. Somehow I want to measure the temperature and humidity inside the dryers, and for this I will use this HDC 1080 humidity and temperature sensors. According to my investigation, these are one of the most accurate cheap sensors, and only I have to solder these pins to the board, and I hope I will not damage the sensor with this operation. I will connect the sensor to Arduino and follow the values on the serial monitor screen. The problem is that these sensors use I2C or I2C communication, but they have the same address. This means I can connect only one sensor to this Arduino. Since I don't have a TCA9548A I2C expander, I will just use two Arduinos. Now I did one more experiment a little bit more visual, so I have these sponges for the cleaning of the soldering tip, and I will search for two with the same weight, and I will add the same amount of the water, and then I will follow the changes after maybe half hours or maybe 1 hour. Okay, I found these two are equal weight, so I will use them in my next experiment. My equipment from the shear stress. So I have two serial monitors and two Arduinos, and I'm getting almost equal values. So these two sensors are quite accurate, at least they are showing the same values. So I will test now with these filament dryers. .31 grams of the water. Let's try to repeat this. And now let's reset the serial monitors, clear output, and I'm collecting now the informations. So this collects informations from the Sunlu Filadryer and this one from the eSun. In Sunlu the temperature is higher already, probably because of the thermal insulation here. And here you can see two Arduinos, both are connected to the same laptop. And they are the temperature sensor on the same position in both cases, approximately. And the time lapse, I hope it will be visually some changes. What a mess, and I have to finish everything before my wife comes home. Oh, that's not mine. Interesting, after half hours of drying, the temperature are equal like with the previous measurements. And the humidity, interesting, so here we have 55%, and in here 63. And look at the walls, I hope it's visible on camera. It's on the wall, because there we have no desiccant, so definitely some kind of silica gel is required, and it will perform much better. So it's very high humidity inside the Sunlu box currently. After 1 hour of drying, temperatures are not changed, so in eSun 39 and Sunlu 43 degrees Celsius, and humidity is 57 and 65. So now I will open this small hole, maybe it will help a little bit so humidity can go out. There's a second exit for the filament because the moisture stuck inside. Here we don't have that problem because there is a desiccant silica gel inside. Approximately 15 minutes after I removed the cover for this hole, I noticed that humidity percentage fall down from 64 to 59. And I can see less water on the walls of the Sunlu filament dryer. And this is the current state after 2 hours. Almost 3.5 hours of drying, and unfortunately I have to stop the experiment here. I was hoping that I will get from this to this size, and that will be recorded with the time-lapse camera, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But I have to stop the experiment now because my youngest daughter is here from the kindergarten, and when she finished that pudding she will take my setup to parts. So I will just stop the experiment here. I measure the weight of the sponges and then make a conclusions. So almost 5 o'clock. Before I open it, current temperature in eSun 39 degrees and 60% of humidity, and almost the same percentage of humidity in the Sunlu, and 43 degrees Celsius inside. So the temperature didn't change. Let's start with the eSun. .05 sponge and the water inside, the rest of the water. And this is the Sunlu. 3.43. And now I just want to copy paste the data into Excel, but first I have to replace the commas with the tabulator. In that case they will be separated into different cells. So copy into Notepad, paste, and I just copy one tabulator. So replace the comma with tabulator, replace all. And I have to replace all these characters, so I will only have the numbers, and then to see the graph. And this is a time-lapse video. The temperature in Sunlu rises quickly, probably thanks to the thermal insulation, but it forced more water from the sponge to the air, and the water partially precipitates on the glass. And when I open the hole, humidity percentage goes down and become equal with the relative humidity percentage inside the eSun filament dryer. And here I can see the graph in the full screen. And now the conclusions. Well, actually, this second test is not really appropriate for these products. I just wanted to have some visual drying effect where the sponge will shrink to its original dry size. But it looks like I added too much water, and suddenly these products couldn't handle that bigger amount of humidity inside in the air. Filament drying is much slower process and you don't have that kind of problem, so that's why the first test is much more important from this aspect. So to answer to the questions which one dries better, they're quite equal. They're not perfect products, both have pros and cons, and actually if I again check this table, if I put together these green fields which are pros, and maybe I change that it could handle up to 70 degrees Celsius, and definitely if it would have humidity sensor and maybe accept a little bit wider spool, in that case I would say that would be a perfect filament dryer product. But if I have to pronounce the winner of today's video, well, actually it would be the HDC 1080 temperature and humidity sensor. This was very pleasant surprise, so it works very nice. And definitely I will use it in one of my next projects, which will be some kind of DIY dry box to storage the filament. Well, if you decide to buy any of these products and you want to support me, you could use the affiliate links which I will place in the description of the video. This means the price for you is the same, only I will have small percentage. It will help to me and my channel. And also I will place a link to this HDC 1080 sensor too. Or if you want to support me, you can just buy me a coffee. Well, I hope you like this video. Thank you for watching and happy drying.